Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Bret Shuford is as dynamic a speaker as he is dancer. And today I have him with me to tell you about the journey he and Stephen went on to become the parents to Maverick. You don't want to miss all that he has to share. Welcome, listeners. I am really excited to be able today to introduce you to Bret. And Bret is one of two faces you may know from Instagram and TikTok and all of the social media platforms as the Broadway husbands. Welcome, Bret. Would you tell us about the members of your family?
Sure. Hi, Sam. So my name is Bret Shuford. I am 44 years old, and I'm married to Stephen Hannah, who is also officially, as of yesterday, the same age as me. And we have a little boy who we gave birth to in March of 22 via surrogacy and IVF. And his name is Maverick. He's 20, so he's 20 months this year. I mean, this month. What year is it? What day is it?
Especially with the time change, it's getting darker, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's almost Christmas. I guess I have to say that because literally that's what the music is. It's playing everywhere I
Yeah.
go.
I'm all for it. Let's just get right to it. Yeah.
Right. That's right. So, of the various methods available to members of our community to grow their families through parenthood, you chose to use surrogacy. Can I ask a bit more about that? Did you use a surrogate that you know? Did you go through an agency? Did you use a donor you knew? How did you
Yeah,
make
it's
all of those
definitely like a
decisions?
more it's definitely a more nuanced conversation than I remember thinking it was going in. Like surrogacy, it's like surrogacy or adoption. You can go either way, but it's always more nuanced just because biology is nuanced. It's never like black and white. So we started really, for us being freelance artists, we didn't have just disposable income that we could just go through this process. So for us, we decided on surrogacy, or we decided to do a biological journey, I guess I would say,
Mhm.
because we felt like and we weighed both options. We were looking at adoption and we were looking at this. And adoption, I have a brother who's special needs, and we just felt with especially to foster to adopt was something we really were wanting to do. We didn't really want emotionally, I think we didn't feel like we could handle the if the parents decided to take the child back, or the child went to another home, or we just don't necessarily emotionally have the capacity to do that.
Mhm.
um, we felt as a family. So the other thing is I have a brother with special needs, and so there were some genetic disorders that were definitely in the gene line, and we felt like with the biological path you can really do a lot of DNA testing. They can really look at, you can't necessarily prevent things from transferring,
Mhm.
but they can definitely eliminate some of the risk just by doing DNA studies, which I thought was really sort of a relief for us. And then there was this movie Stephen loves to talk about, starring Molly Shannon, that we watched. It was called like Other People, I think. And
Mhm.
she is a mother who has a gay son, and she is dying of cancer. And as she's dying, she says to her son in this film, please keep visiting your sister, because when you see your sister, you'll see me in her face. And for Steven, that was it. Like once he heard that, he was like, okay, I want a child biologically. I just want to be able to pass down our
Mhm.
lineage and have our legacy sort of live in a way through our children. So that was why we chose. And when we decided to announce that, we definitely got grief, mostly from people in the gay community, which I thought was interesting, because people
Wow.
also again think it's very black and white, and it's much more nuanced. Like people are like, why aren't you adopting? There's so many kids that need homes. It's like it's not that simple.
Hmm.
And on one hand, it is very simple, but on the other hand, it's much more complex. And so we were really excited to start the path, but in order to afford to do that path for us, we needed to start one step at a time, and that was just like getting our sperm tested and getting it frozen. um, and then we were able to kind of get through that step and then look at egg donors. So we looked at anonymous egg donor profiles. We have an anonymous donor egg that Maverick was born through, and we were able to get, like, I don't know, in the end we ended up with 5 embryos.
Mm.
We started with, anyone who's been through this, we had 38 eggs. We ended
Wow.
up with 5 embryos, right? That's how it goes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Every day your hope is dashed just a little bit more.
Hmm.
But you had 5 embryos. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so we ended up with 5 embryos, and the next step after that was then to find a carrier.
Right.
And we were struggling because we didn't want to necessarily pay the fees to go through an agency. We were trying to see if there was anyone on Facebook, in these Facebook groups, that might be willing to do it. And there were a lot of like really sketchy profiles. And we finally met one person who had been a carrier before, which is rare.
Mm.
And we interviewed her and her husband. The doctor looked at her records and felt like she was an okay fit. Like, let's do a team day. So we flew her and her husband to Connecticut, did a team day. Everything looked good. She seemed okay. I mean, there was one like minor, some like PTSD thing that had happened to her, that an agency, that's why she wouldn't go through an agency, because an agency wouldn't approve her because of this event that had happened. But the doctor was like, I'm willing to overlook it if you like her and you guys are good. And we're like, yeah, I think we're good. And so we did everything, got to the contracts, everything written up, and she bailed right at the end. Like,
Mm.
it was so devastating.
I was gonna say heartbreaking. It's got to be absolutely just heartbreaking.
And also, looking back on it, it was a relief. Like, it was the right
Hmm.
thing that needed to happen, because then we were at our really good friend's 40th surprise birthday party, and an acquaintance of hers that we had met and spent time with was there. And she was like, I heard about what happened. I would so carry your baby. You guys would be such wonderful parents. And I was like, you've had too much wine. And she was like, no, I'm serious. Like, let's talk. And we did. And that's who carried our child.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Through seeming casual conversation, that's amazing. And what a
I didn't
gift.
think, I thought at some point, maybe the criminal background check, or when they had to like fill her uterus with saline, she would be like, no, I'm good. But we were in the delivery room and she delivered our baby, and it was really cool because it was someone that we knew. And of course, we know her very well now, and she's
Yeah,
a very, very dear friend. And she's definitely part of our family now. So it was really, really magical.
that is amazing. And had she had any children prior to birthing
Mhm.
Maverick for you?
Yeah. So one of the requirements, at least typically, unless is that the carrier should have had at least one child, because they want to know that everything works.
Hmm.
That's one of the things they look at on the records.
That's and
So
that's
she has two.
that's important. She has two, and that's an upside too, because then she's had some kids. She's not likely to get any kind of a yearning for or regret for the journey she's embarking upon.
I think that's the other plus to that is, she only volunteered because she's like, I don't love being pregnant. I just want to help you guys be dads. Like, had nothing to do with her self. It was an incredibly selfless thing that she did. And I think most people can't quite understand that. It's when people do that. Well, what are you gonna? My mom even asked this. Well, what are you gonna do if she wants to keep the baby? It's like, well, first off, it's not hers. Second off, she knows that. Third, she doesn't want another kid. She's got two of her own. Like, she's done,
Yeah,
right? And we wouldn't have gotten into this agreement if she was somebody that we didn't feel had our best interests.
Right. And that is the upside of going through the process of talking to care providers and things like that and making sure that she's had all of her medical checks and things like that done. So you've got a pretty good idea going into it what the status is before you even really get started, right?
Yeah. But the carrier for me was certainly the hardest part because the cost is the greatest.
Mhm.
The amount of time, because it's not just like a one time let's make embryos and freeze them. It's a 9 month or longer process. We did have a miscarriage, the first embryo transfer, and that was very hard for everyone.
Mhm.
And she lives in Florida, and we were like, oh my gosh, will they even do a DNC there?
Right.
So those are things you have to kind of think about, that I don't think anyone, you're like, oh, we're just gonna get pregnant. Like, well, what state are you in? What are the parenting rules? Like, the laws that they, will the hospital even let you in the room? There's just so many things that you have to like legally take care of,
Mhm.
before anything happens. And we were just lucky it was somebody we knew and trusted.
And so she birthed in Florida for you.
Yeah.
You went to Florida. What is the set of, I mean, I live in a country where they've issued warnings for members of our community for traveling to Florida. They just say, it's not necessarily the safest place for you to choose to go. If you want a vacation, choose somewhere else. So that kind of a statement in the media gives someone like me the impression that if I went to Florida, any queer person in Florida would just, have such a hard time. I've not been there. I've not been through the process. So what is it really like, or at the very least, what was your experience like through the birth
Well,
process and that kind of thing?
she gave birth in Orlando, and Orlando is a more, the way most of these states, like we live in Texas now, so talk about a red state, right? It's very
Mm-hmm.
similar to Florida.
Yeah.
And but there's the cities, right? So Austin, Houston, Dallas, they can be very progressive bubbles within this big red state. So Orlando is a very diverse, multicultural community. So there was no fear on our end. However, they did pass the "Don't Say Gay" bill like the week before. I remember thinking that was ironic that we're gonna go give like a gay couple giving birth to our baby in Orlando. But we were at, there were certainly like, and this is going to happen anywhere, there were things that we experienced at the hospital, like checking into the hospital, the security guy, he's probably some Trump redneck who gets paid minimum wage to work security at the hospital. He was very confused, like, why are there three men, because our service husband was there, with this woman coming into the hospital together, right? um and we were like, it's surrogacy, and he was like, his brain was going to explode. What? I don't, like, he couldn't. And I remember thinking like, oh no, is this how it's going to be?
Mhm.
But we had, luckily, everything was written down legally, and we had our lawyers. We had a Florida lawyer, representing her, and everything was done, and I's dotted, T's crossed. So I had everything printed out and on me, and I was ready. It was like ammunition. I was like, the head nurse came up to me. I barely said anything to her. I just held the papers out and said, here, this is the situation. You can't say anything to us. It's all
Yeah.
legal. Do
Yeah.
it. Take care of it.
Once the baby's born, what are the legal processes you have to go through? Because someone else has physically birthed your child, I assume there's going to be a couple of hoops or forms or something that needs to be completed to say she is rescinded all rights. Does she have to rescind all rights to a
Mhm.
child she's birthed, even though biologically it's not related to her?
The way I sort of think about it is like there's almost like three different entities that are being protected. There's the couple, there's the parents, right?
Hmm.
Or a single parent, whoever. Like, so there's us, there's the mother, and there's the baby. And so and then in the same way, there's like almost three processes to it. There's the creating the embryo, right?
Hmm.
Once that embryo transfers and takes, we're now, it's about her. It's now about like the pregnancy and making sure that she's taken care of and healthy, so that because she's carrying our child. Once the birth happens, um, you have to get everything again legally done. They have something called a pre-birth order. So the pre-birth order actually states the parenting rights and says that she does rescind anything, and it says that the parents are Bret and Stephen.
Oh, good.
However, in the hospital, but just because of the way hospitals organized, the baby is still, the name initially is still Crystal until we check out of the hospital on the baby's like bassinet, right? So they
Okay.
understand that the woman in the room who gave birth is related to the situation of the people
Right.
in this room. But we were in the room with the baby. She was in her recovery room, and and her room was much nicer and much more luxurious. And we made sure of it. Um,
Yep. Fair.
we were very uncomfortable. Um, but but yeah, so she really does agree beforehand, like, this is not my child. And she didn't want to even really want her name on the thing. We were like, she was like, I don't really want my name on the thing. It was like, it's just semantics for them to keep track.
Right. This baby came out of this body to
Hmm.
draw a
What's
line between
so
them.
sweet that they did is, like, because the bracelets said Crystal, and then when we all, like, she gave birth, and when we all were in the room together, just the three of us, me, Stephen, and Maverick, for the first time, the nurses came in and they gave us bracelets with his name on it and our names on it. And it was it was a very sweet moment. And so, yeah, he was ours. Like, now every state is different, and that's something I didn't realize. Like, some states you're going to have to do a post-birth adoption, so that, and sometimes genetically whomever is connected in some countries, right? Like, even we talked to a couple from Ireland, and whoever's genetically connected to the baby is automatically assumed the parent, even if it's not, like, they don't want it, right?
Hmm.
So it can be very complicated. And so depending on what state you're in, you're not necessarily thinking about the state you live in, you're thinking about the state that the birth mother is giving birth in.
Hmm. Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back. It's Sam from babyREADY. If you have been listening to this podcast, then you know that the focus is to help you find answers to questions you didn't even know you had. And now you get to do it in person. On Saturday, June 8th at the 519 in Toronto on Church Street, I am hosting an in-person event where you get to come and listen to different people speak about the work that they do to help members of the queer community start or grow their families through parenthood. For more information, visit my website, www.babyready.info. You're using a phrase that intrigues me, and you're
Hmm.
calling her the birth mother. And and I guess in Maverick's eyes, what will her designation be? Will she just be Crystal who gave birth to me, and or will you keep that as a birth mother kind of designation? I mean, it can be for some people a very touchy phraseology.
Yeah, I do think there's a, I very adamantly talk to Maverick and to everyone else that Maverick doesn't have a mother. Like, he has
Right.
two dads,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's what makes him so unique and cool. And I tell him all the time, like, my parents come over and I'm like, I have a mom and a dad, but you have two dads. Like,
Hmm.
that's cool.
Yep.
And so in Crystal, we had a conversation with her. What do you want to be called? Like we had that agreement before. Like, how do you want to be related to Maverick? And she was like, my name's Crystal. It's like, okay. She's like, great. And her thing was like, you can call me his like belly buddy. That was a word we came up with.
Love that.
And so, we'll say that's your belly buddy, Crystal, or we'll say that's Crystal. But in essence, she feels sort of like an aunt.
Right. Okay.
She's like someone who's like a relative, but sort of removed.
Hmm. Yeah. She's important to the family dynamic because you are the family that you are because of her. I ask and I hear people use not just birth mother, but I hear about donor father. And I'm thinking, if somebody is a donor, are they a father? Because to me, that role or that dad role goes to the person who's doing the day-to-day hands-on kind of thing. And so that's why I was asking more for your
I think
clarification, but what that means for you.
I do think there is something about I use those words. I use them interchangeably. Like saying birth mother doesn't, because she is the person who gave birth,
Right.
but she is not his mother. So
Right.
it's a challenging. But we do, I've also talked to people who are adult donor conceived people,
Hmm.
and that's a big thing for them, is making sure that we're acknowledging the donors and we're acknowledging the people who made this possible, because it is it is very easy to like to want to just pretend, and at least in society it has historically
Hmm.
been very easy where people have kept those things from their children in order to
Right.
pretend that those children were genetically tied. And we all know nowadays you can't really hide anything from people.
Nope. No, you can't.
So
23andMe made it possible for us to know literally everything
everything.
and uncover every single secret.
So you might as well just be, so donor father can just be like, that's your donor father. He's not your father. He's your donor father, right?
Right.
This is your birth mother. She's not your mother. She's your birth mother.
Right.
Yeah.
When all is said and done, are you comfortable giving some kind of a ballpark figure as to how much you and Stephen had to invest in the process of family creation for having one child?
I mean, we've not really pinched the numbers, maybe just because we don't want to. Because we're
Sticker
just like,
shock.
don't want to go through the pain of
Uh-huh.
realizing how much we spent. But I would say, all in all, it took us 4 years to get from sperm test to birth.
Right.
And all in all, it was about 150K.
That makes sense. Because well, I think the things that we don't think about necessarily including in that, but certainly do factor into it, was at one point you were further north than you are, and you had to fly somebody to Connecticut to and pay. So then you're paying for their testing and stuff like that, but you've also paid for their accommodations and their flight and their, I assume, health insurance and things like that all through the process as well. So it's all of those seemingly small incidentals because they're one-offs here and one-offs there that also add up for
And the legal, like,
oh
I
yeah.
think, the legal fees were something that kind of sneak up on you too, because they kind of come in at the right at the last minute, right before you're like, we got a carrier. Oh wait, I have to drop like another how much to get the legal stuff.
Right.
um yeah, there it is a accumulation, and that's why I think some people go through an agency, because you can just pay like a flat fee
Mm,
and they do kind of just take care of it. But it's twice, it would have been probably $200,000 if we'd
wow.
done that, right? And because of the miscarriage and the DNC, I mean, there was just it just kept getting extended and extended and extended, and then of course COVID.
Right.
Um, so it is somewhere in there. We did have to take a loan. There's a company or an organization called Future Family that gives out donation, or gives out family building loans.
Hmm.
And so that was something halfway through the pregnancy we ended up having to do, just to kind of buffer the bank account. But so we carried a little debt post that to, but it was, listen, it's 100% worth it. 100%.
Absolutely. And it is. I mean, the reason we take paths that we take is because it's absolutely worth it and you wouldn't change it for a second. Which isn't to say, and I think that this is something that comes up a lot with the couples that I do work with, is I often hear from them to say when they say, I wanted this child so much. I wanted to be this child's parent so much, and yet I don't love being this child's parent every single day. And then there's the guilt associated with that. And I keep saying, you don't love every single thing about your partner every single day either. It's part of residing in the same house as someone else and trying to figure out how to make your own wants and needs mesh with theirs. I think it's okay to spend $10, $100, $100,000 to have a child and still not love being that child's parent every single day without there needing to be any guilt associated with it.
It's a job that you can't get a break from, so you're not going to love it every day. And being a human being is, I think that's the biggest challenge we run into. Stephen and I talk about probably the most, is trying to be a perfect parent, which just does not exist. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You're not going to be a perfect parent because it literally is impossible.
Yeah. And the best gift you can give your child is let them know I'm doing my best, but sometimes I make mistakes. And
Yeah.
when they're 20 months old, they're sometimes smaller mistakes than they are when they're 20 years old, but they're still mistakes and it doesn't stop happening throughout their
And the
lives.
earlier that they get to see you be imperfect, and the earlier in their life that they get to see you make mistakes and then own those mistakes and acknowledge those mistakes, what a beautiful lesson to learn so early in life, to
Mm-hmm.
take with you, to know, like, I don't have to be perfect. My parents aren't perfect. I get to, right? I mean, God knows there's so much pressure in the world already. So why put more?
Yeah, yeah, your parents are supposed to be your safe space, right?
Hmm.
And your family is supposed to be your safe space for sure. You talked about getting to the hospital and being made to feel a bit like the other when you walk in, as to be fair, one of four people walking in, only one of whom is clearly having a baby. And so the confusion that may ensue. Were there other points during the process of family creation that you and Stephen were made to feel like you were the other for being queer dads?
Not really during, well, okay. Maybe when in regards to family. That's
Mhm.
maybe the hardest. Um, yeah, I would say that's been the hardest adjustment in parenthood is, I always say this. I didn't realize, no one talked enough about the fact that when you have a child, you will relive your childhood traumas on a daily basis.
Mhm.
No one really talks about that. Like, it was shocking. And maybe it's because I've just done a lot of therapy work and I just am very aware of what my triggers are or whatever. But
Mhm.
like, I just couldn't believe the how important it became for me to set really clear boundaries with my immediate family, because I don't feel safe like with them and their beliefs. They're very conservative and have always been. They've been very tolerant of me, but once I had my kid, it was like tolerable is not enough.
Mhm.
It's not enough. You got to
Yeah.
fully accept and love us 100% unconditionally, and they're just not really capable of doing that. Not, not, and I mean that with love. That's just not what they're capable of doing. So I had to set boundaries. And there were things definitely in the process of having to communicate with them, like who Crystal was, and they would say things that were sort of offensive because they're privileged people who are able to just get pregnant and don't know what it's like to go through
Right.
this process when you want to have a family. And that, so there were things like that, you know but I can't say that in the hospital and the doctors, our doctors were great. Of course, we had a gay fertility doctors who has a children of his own. That was something that, one of the reasons why we chose him. I was like, he gets it.
Yeah.
Um, and ironically enough, the OBGYN, Crystal's doctor, was also gay. So we were like, great, like,
Yep. Yep.
we were like in good hands in those ways. But there is definitely, when we first brought Maverick home, Texas, we were walking him in his little stroller bassinet, and one of our neighbors came over and was like, "Oh, did y'all get a dog?" Just assuming two men would, why would they have a bassinet,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, we had a baby," and their brain was like, "What?"
That's right. You hear that? They're procreating. It just
That was funny.
it, it and there gets to be a point where you have to just laugh because otherwise it just hurts too much with the world around us and the comments that are made and the things that people will say.
Yeah, I would try not to take any of it personally, and I always come from the angle of like, this is awesome for this person to see this. Like, they're seeing this in the flesh in their neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's expanding their world, it's expanding their mind, and they never would have probably seen that if we didn't live here,
Right.
you know?
And then they get to watch you parent just exactly like everybody else is
Right.
parenting. Yeah. Your kid has
Exhausted.
tantrums. Your kid is wonderful. Your kid helps in the neighborhood. Your kid does everything exactly just like all of the other kids in the community do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just a gift, right? And that's important. It's really
Yeah.
important. What is your absolute favorite part of being Maverick's dad?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. It is just, oh, I'm getting emotional.
It's hard not to.
I just love watching him realize who he is every day. He discovers his own opinion about something, or his own taste in something, or his own desire, passion for something. Um, might today it's a vacuum, right? Tomorrow it could be, like a horse, a stuffed horse.
Yeah.
Um, and I love being able to watch him and hold space for him to express all of those things in whatever range. There was a moment yesterday where he was having a hard time. He was having we don't call them tantrums, we call them emotional breakdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And he he was having a hard time. And I literally just sat there and I put my hand on him and I said, I hear you and I'm here and I can hold you. If that's what you need, you tell me what you need. And he wanted me to hold him, and I held him. And I said to him, I was like, I can handle whatever emotions you're having. I'm here for them. I'm here for whatever it is you need. And I think I get emotional. And this is the hard part of parenting that I think, like I said, people didn't warn about, is when you give your child the thing you didn't get.
Mm-hmm.
There's like such a sense of grief, and it's like two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
There's this sense of grief for my own child, for who I was, and there's this sense of love and elation and joy for this child and what I'm able to give him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we can't change the history behind us, but we can use it to propel us to make a better world for the people coming after.
Yeah.
And the fact that you give Maverick that gift of just being there and listening and loving him through it, even if it's not his most lovable moment on paper, doesn't make him any less lovable in the moment.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a pretty amazing way to wrap up what has been a very enlightening conversation. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today and to let other people know what your journey was like and the fight you had to fight in order to be able to be the family that you are now.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Oh, it's really my pleasure. Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.